All right, today we're going to delve into the archives of psychiatric history to look at a really remarkable case from a young Carl Jung way back in 1902. It's a story that reveals the mind's absolutely astonishing power to protect itself, even if that means completely shattering its own reality.
So in this case, it really forces us to ask a pretty fundamental question. What happens when the mind decides to forget? And I'm not just talking about a single painful memory, but entire chunks of time, basic skills, or even your own identity. Let's dive into this psychological mystery together.
So where does our story begin? Well, it ends up in a clinical setting, but its origins are in a prison with a woman whose mind just abruptly collapses under the immense weight of her circumstances.
Okay, let's just walk through the timeline of what happened here. On May 31st, a woman named Godwina F is arrested. Now, for several days, she's described as perfectly normal, quiet and respectable. But then, on the morning of June 4th, everything changes, and it changes dramatically. She's found rigid, delusional, accusing the prison staff of theft and of trying to poison her. By that same evening, she's so completely disoriented that she has to be transferred to the famous Berg-Holtzley Psychiatric Clinic. The sheer speed of this breakdown, that's our first big clue that something incredibly unusual is going on.
So when the doctors examine her, the symptoms are, well, they're just baffling. She has these delusions of grandeur, right? She's claiming she has millions and that she's staying in a luxury hotel, but at the exact same time, she's showing signs of acute fear, she has profound memory loss, she can't even say her own name, and this is really strange, she has a complete insensibility to pain from pinpricks. The whole clinical picture is just one of total psychological chaos. But it wasn't just the memory loss or the delusions that were so strange. The most puzzling part of her condition was the bizarre nature of her answers to the simplest questions. And this is where Jung's brilliant analytical mind really starts to dig in.
So Jung starts with the basics, a simple test of cognitive function. He asks her, what is 3 times 4?
And her answer? 2. Now think about that for a second. The answer isn't just random gibberish. It's a number. Now, it's incorrect, sure, but it's in the right conceptual category. It tells us she understands she's been asked a mathematical question.
Okay. Next, he tries to test her orientation to her surroundings. He gestures to himself and asks, "Who am I?"
She replies, "The head waiter." And right here, again, we see this pattern emerging. I mean, she's in a clinic with a doctor, but her answer is perfectly consistent within her delusion of being in a luxury hotel. The response is factually wrong, but it's internally logical.
Finally, Jung holds up a simple object, just a notebook, and asks what it is.
Her reply? The menu. And that response just completes the pattern, doesn't it? The head waiter, the menu. Her mind isn't a blank slate. It's actively constructing this coherent, even if totally false, narrative. Her answers are what we'd call near misses.
And this whole phenomenon actually has a clinical name. It's called Ganser's symptom, or the symptom of the senseless answer. It describes this state, often seen in prisoners under extreme stress, where they give these approximate near-miss answers. And the implication here is just profound. It suggests the patient understands the question, but some unconscious process, some force, is intervening and preventing the correct response from coming out.
So Jung's faced with this total confusion on the surface. What does he do? He turns to a technique that was pretty cutting edge for his time, a way to bypass the patient's defenses and speak directly to the part of her mind that might still hold the truth, hypnosis.
Jung's idea here was, well, it was simple, but at the same time, pretty revolutionary. He believed that while Godwina's conscious mind seemed to be a tabula rasa, a total blank slate, her unconscious mind was still active, still oriented, and still held all the memories she couldn't seem to access.
But a simple hypnosis just wasn't going to cut it here. So Jung used this more complex technique he'd learned from Pierre Janet called double hypnosis. So first, he'd hypnotize her into a state of somnambulism. Then, while she was already in that trance, he would perform the hypnotic induction all over again. This process basically pushed her through a state of deep sleep and into a third, even deeper level of consciousness, a layer of her mind that held memories that were inaccessible even to her standard hypnotized self.
And the results? They were absolutely mind-blowing. While she was awake, Godwina had total amnesia for that whole period of her breakdown. But in this deep, hypnotic state, she recalled everything. She described the cab ride to the asylum,
a violent thunderstorm that was raging that night, the police sergeant who came with her, all details that were later externally confirmed as fact. The memories weren't gone, they were just sequestered, locked away.
So with this new evidence in hand, Jung could finally assemble all the bizarre pieces of Godwina F's condition and come up with a coherent diagnosis.
His formal diagnosis was hysterical stupor of the convict, a specific psychiatric condition seen almost exclusively in prisoners, brought on by the immense psychological pressure of their situation.
Now, the mechanism behind all of this is a concept that was absolutely central to early psychoanalysis: hysterical conversion. The theory is that an overwhelming emotional feeling, in her case, the terror and shame of her arrest, her anxiety for her daughter, it becomes too much for the conscious mind to handle. So that psychic energy is converted into a physical or psychological symptom. For her, it was converted into a total stupor.
And this is where we get to the real core of the case, the big insight. Her condition wasn't a sign of some brain disease or just random madness. No, it served a purpose. Her forgetting was a defense mechanism, but one that was taken to an absolutely pathological extreme. To escape the unbearable reality of her arrest and her imprisonment, her mind didn't just push away a few painful thoughts. As Jung put it, it drew back from entire zones of memory, effectively erasing the whole horrible situation from her conscious awareness.
And Jung himself just summed it up perfectly with this powerful insight. He wrote, "Her not knowing turns out to be a half-conscious not wanting to know." You see? Her amnesia wasn't a passive failure of memory. It was an active, if unconscious, refusal to remember. It was a flight from psychic pain into illness.
And that really leaves us with a final, fascinating question to think about. The case of Godwina F proves that memories can exist, fully formed in detail just beyond the reach of our conscious mind. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of what we all forget is truly gone, and how much is simply hidden, just waiting for the right key to unlock it?